The following day, Liwei and Amara took the private jet to Beijing. Amara could barely contain her excitement as she clutched her phone, already Googling the places she was about to see. The thought of finally standing in a place she had dreamed of for so long made her heart race, and what made it even more unreal was that she wouldn't be there alone, but with her fiancé, the love of her life. She glanced sideways at him, watching how effortlessly handsome he looked, seated with his notepad in hand, writing and reviewing, completely focused. She thought about how absurd it was that no matter how many times she looked at him, she still fell in love all over again. The sight of him melted her every single time. Everything about him felt perfect, and the most unbelievable part was that she got to call him hers, her man. Smiling to herself, she secretly snapped a few photos and short videos of him, giggling softly as she did. Liwei closed his notepad and stood, walking toward her. He leaned closer, his presence suddenly filling her space. Confused, Amara asked what he was doing and whether everything was okay. His eyes stayed on her as he told her that, since she clearly wanted photos of him, it was better he stood closer so she could get the best angle. Embarrassment washed over her face as she looked down, asking how he knew she was taking pictures of him. He chuckled lightly, explaining that his eyes and ears were always on standby. He took her phone, lifted it, snapped a selfie of himself, tapped the screen a few times, and handed it back to her. When Amara looked down, she realized he had set his photo as her screensaver. Her face flushed instantly. He smiled, reached out to touch her face gently, then turned and went back to his seat, resuming his work, leaving her staring at her phone, blushing and smiling to herself. They finally arrived and boarded the helicopter that took them to the lakeside section of the Great Wall, where Liwei had arranged a completely private viewing just for the two of them. Amara stood in awe, her eyes wide as she took in the sight, the wall stretching endlessly against the landscape. They walked around together, taking pictures, laughing softly. Liwei watched her, his heart settling at the sight of her smile, thinking how he wanted to be the reason she smiled like that always, how he never wanted to see sadness touch her face again. After the tour, they settled into a picnic setup by the lakeside, the Great Wall visible in the distance. They lay there together, the cool breeze brushing against their skin, the moment peaceful and intimate. Liwei turned to her and asked if she had enjoyed her day. She nodded immediately, smiling brightly, telling him it was the best day and thanking him for bringing her. He told her that he hadn't known she loved historical places so much, and that they should do things like this more often. He added that maybe once they were married, or even before, they could visit her country as well, see where she came from. Amara nodded excitedly, telling him she would love that, explaining that where she was from, there was a lot of wildlife. With excitement in her voice, she told him she could take him on a game drive and show him the small village she grew up in. Liwei smiled and agreed easily, then asked about her family, whether there were relatives he needed to meet before the wedding or invite to it. Almost instantly, Amara's expression changed. The brightness in her eyes dimmed as painful memories surfaced. Liwei noticed immediately, pulling her closer and asking what was wrong, wondering if he had said something he shouldn't have. She shook her head, explaining that the question had just stirred up memories she didn't think about often. He told her gently that it was okay if she didn't want to talk about it. She shook her head again, telling him that since they were getting married soon, it was better he knew. She explained that she did have family on her mother's side, her mother's only sister, and that, unlike her mother, her aunt had married a wealthy man and lived a comfortable life. She added that they were never close, that even her mother wasn't close to her. When her mother was struggling and asked them for help, they had chased her away like a dog. Sometimes, instead of helping her, her aunt would make her do humiliating chores like sweeping the yard or washing clothes, then pay her almost nothing, doing it purely to mock her. Amara said she was just a child then, but her heart had broken watching her mother endure that. Liwei listened, his chest tightening. He asked how a sister could treat her own blood that way when they came from the same womb. Amara shook her head, saying she didn't know either. She continued, explaining that when her mother became sick and needed surgery, she went to beg them for help, but they kicked her out again. When her mother eventually died, they didn't care at all. Tears streamed down her face as she said she had buried her mother alone, calling it the most painful moment of her life. She admitted that back then, she wanted to give up entirely, believing it would be better to end her life and join her mother. Liwei pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, wrapping her up completely. He told her she would never suffer like that again, that he was here now and would make sure no one ever put her through that kind of pain again. He promised that anyone who had hurt her like that would never get the chance to do so again, that he would carry that grudge for her if he had to. He kissed her forehead gently, apologizing for asking a question that reopened such wounds. Amara wiped her tears and looked at him, telling him it was okay, that it was all in the past, and that she didn't hold hatred toward them. She explained that holding on to hatred would only consume her and cause her more pain. Liwei nodded, smiling softly, telling her she was right. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. He checked it and immediately sat up straighter, his expression changing. It was a message from Master Shen, informing him that the mission would begin in 2 hours and that he needed to be prepared. In that moment, Liwei knew the day had finally arrived. All he could do was hope that everything would go according to plan and that he would return safely to Amara's side.